fan. And any barmaid can be a star maid if she dances with or without a plan. Hooray for Hollywood, where you're terrific if you're even good. Where anyone at all from Shirley Temple to Amy Semple is equally understood. Go out and try your luck, you may be Donald Duck. Hooray for Hollywood.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, you are listening to a Radulich Broadcasting premier podcast, Damn You Hollywood. And here's your host, station's most bodacious creation, ladies and gentlemen, Robert Winfree. Yay!
Hi, everybody. We're back because we just can't get enough of each other.
That's a lie.
We are doing back-to-back podcasts, minor break in between so old man Radulich can nap. But we earlier today released our review of The New Mutants, which you can find now. It is time to face the proverbial music. I'm Robert Winfree. We will be talking tonight about the third part of the multi-generational spanning epic trilogy of Bill and Ted.
Station!
Joining me on this particular adventure, back from Honeysuckle Rose Creations, we have Alexis Hejna. How you doing, Alexis?
Most excellent.
We have the poor man who decided to try and edit down a several-hour conversation into podcast format, and trying to edit down those of us that had the Star Trek retrospective piece we did with David. I feel for you, man. I really, really do. But David Wright is here. He wants to talk about Keanu Reeves and the guy that no one knows. So, David, how you doing? Welcome back.
Well, I'm not editing this podcast, so I'm good.
And
it was actually only 3 hours that I edited down to a little under 2.
That's not too bad, then. I mean, going through 3 hours of that to edit it down sounds like a very labor-intensive process.
Yeah. But I have to admit, I did skip a week because New Flight Simulator.
Fair enough.
I've known at least 2 other people who've been playing the same damn thing. Saw the graphics. Pretty impressive.
Yeah. Having a computer that can show said graphics is even more impressive. Which I thought.
Boy, ain't that the truth. And finally, he's got the brain of a German Shepherd and the body of a 16-year-old boy. They're both in the trunk of his car out back, and he'd love to show them to you, Mark Radulich.
Station?
Okay, for those of you who don't know, apparently that's the first joke Bob Saget ever told on stage in a stand-up routine, and I thought it was hilarious, so I figured I could steal it to intro Mark.
Good job.
It's been a while since I've heard you stump Mark like that.
I do what I can on occasion. All right, so we're going to be tackling again Bill and Ted as they face the music. Where do we want to start with this? Mark, I have to start. I'll start with this. Mark, why is this on the schedule?
Well, it was originally on the schedule in its original placement. Another week, another franchise movie, and then the world ended, and then it got bunched together with New Mutants, and I had to change the schedule up to accommodate that. But the short answer to your question is because it's a franchise movie.
That is a weak excuse. But it does. But sadly, we have very weak standards, so it does pass.
Yeah,
muster.
I was going to say, and
Just say weak standards, nothing. We have no standards.
That's not entirely true.
Well, you do let me on the show.
I think in terms of choosing movies, we do have some standards. You know, part of a franchise, part of a large IP, that sort of thing. Either that or
Mark
we'd be going...
just decides it amuses him to make me watch it.
Hence why he put Kitchen on the schedule last year.
Which I didn't even watch. I took a moral stance on that one. So yeah, let's just go with Alexis and then David. You guys both volunteered to be on this show. You just kind of fit the 50 words or less treatment of your history with this franchise, such as it is.
Well, before I begin with that, I'm going to just make this quick announcement here for anyone who's listening. We discussed this earlier on our Facebook chat in prep for this. We're going to try to avoid going into the constructs of the time travel in this movie. Like pretty much any other time travel movie, you have to ignore a lot of plot holes, a lot of conflicts, and what would probably be enough reality warping paradoxes to make us suddenly all turn blue and have antlers stick out of our head, and that would be the new reality. And since the first Bill and Ted movie is practically built on the concept that this is paradox-free time travel, I requested to the rest of the guys that we just not go into that, because I do not want this podcast to get bogged down for 2 hours and turn into a TED Talk.
Look, as the resident Mr. Wizard, that did destroy the only things I was going to say about this particular movie, so that hurts me, but...
We can talk about Endgame instead.
Endgame at least makes a concerted effort to both establish that the multiverse reality does help avoid a giant chunk of the paradoxes, and I've said in the past that brief little summation that that Bruce Banner gives about why they're not actually affecting what's going on in the contemporary world from their own perspective is one of the most accurate descriptions of why that particular theory of time travel works the way that it does.
And I just thought it was so that they can't use time travel to solve all their problems.
No, I mean they could try, but it wouldn't solve all their problems.
Either way, we are not going to discuss how by pretty much any other standard of popular time travel in books, TV, movies, etc., Bill and Ted should have just ended reality in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah, look, my only request for movies that involve time travel is that they remain internally consistent. That's all I can realistically ask. And this one does, to the extent that it kind of plays by its own set of rules, none of which are based on anything approximating even theoretical reality, but it stays within the rules that it assigns itself, and that's all you can realistically ask, I think. So, okay, David, again, you wanted to be on. What brought you to Bill and Ted?
Well, I watched the original movie when I was a kid, and it's a classic. And I think I saw at least some of Bogus Journey, and it didn't really click with me nearly as much. At some point, I'll have to go and revisit it.
Bogus Journey gave me nightmares when I saw the trailers.
Yeah,
Because one of the shots they show is the evil robots, Bill and Ted, opening their mouths to reveal their skull-like robot faces, and I was 7 when that came out.
Yeah, that didn't bother me, mind you. I think Terminator had been out for a while by then. But yeah, it was more the going to hell part of it, whereas I was expecting more fun time-traveling shenanigans. But they went in a different direction. So for Bill and Ted Face the Music, I became interested when I heard that this was not a studio-mandated film where they just drag up the almost dead corpse of whatever 80s property they have in their catalog and just make some sort of a movie out of it just to cash in on the nostalgia. That it was actually Keanu Reeves and Alex Winters they wanted to make this film.
And it kind of managed to create a film that feels like every soulless cash grab from an 80s property that's dripping with nostalgia.
We're going to have some disagreements, I think. But it kind of reminds me of like Crocodile Dundee 3, where Paul Hogan, after Crocodile Dundee 2, said, I've done my bit with this character. I'm not going to make any more movies.
And then the world never heard from him again.
For the most part.
That's not true. He was a giant force in various advertising campaigns.
Yep, saved Subaru. But then
really did, actually. I mean, we joke about it, but yeah.
Yeah, but then sort of when he ended up moving to L.A. and he just kind of started to get some ideas over the years for fun situations that Mick Dundee would have if he was living in L.A. So one day he realized, like, hey, I've got enough material here that I could do another movie. And he did, and Crocodile Dundee 3 is actually a really good movie. So when it comes from a place of genuine creativity and artistic desire to make the film, I think it's okay. Whereas instead of just being a soulish cash grab just to check a box on a list, so that kind of made me hopeful for this movie. And once the trailers came out, it's like, okay, yeah, it looks like we're getting more Bill and Ted, which is kind of what I want.
All right, Mark, do you have any history with this property, or are you just like, hey, franchise, let's make Winfree suffer?
I mean, I saw it when it came out when I was younger, and I liked it just fine. I don't have a great love for it like the other two folks do on the panel, and many people do. I think with a lot of stuff that came out, when were these? The early 90s?
Yeah, mostly.
I think it was. Go ahead, Alexis.
It was 89 and 91.
Yeah, so like I'm in high school when these movies come out, and I think a junior high going into high school, and I think at the time, like they were funny. I think the first one I thought was funny was especially for a junior high mind, and then I think I was perplexed as to why it got a second one. But I saw it. I think I ended up liking it more. I certainly on rewatch, I like the second one more than the first one, but I think I'm just a little too old when these movies come out for it to have any kind of lasting effect on me. Like I think these are for a much more juvenile crowd than I was even at that time, and I'm noticing that with. As I watch people's engagement with these movies, that if you were younger in the 90s, if you were your guys' age, there seems to be much more affection for them than, with those of us who were a little bit older at the time. At least that's the way it appears to me.
Look, I haven't seen any of them. This was my first experience with Bill and Ted in any capacity. So we're running the gamut here. As far as people's again relationship with the franchise, that'll be. So we should get something out of this.
I do consider them classic films. Like every DVD collection, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure should be in. It's not really something that I would put on a pedestal to the point where once they announce the female-led reboot, I pretend like this has been some sort of formative aspect of my entire personality and lifestyle. It's a good movie. It's just a good movie.
The other thing about them is I also wasn't really into stoner comedies at any point in my life. So like this.
Wow, you and I agree on something. Holy crap!
What's the one that? Oh, Half Baked is another one that everybody loves.
Pineapple Express.
Yeah, like I never saw a lot of those movies because I'm not into that kind of movie, so I didn't care.
Yeah, I never really thought of Bill and Ted as stoners, and I still don't because they never get high. It's just that kind of airhead,
lovable goofball.
Yeah, lovable goofballs, and that's sort of the key is they're lovable. Like you really like these guys, these characters, and just sort of seeing them put in these situations and how they react to things, just totally unfazed by whatever is happening. Like no matter what situation they're in, they're still Bill and Ted. And they always react to it in a Bill and Ted way, be it them being in a saloon brawl or being, chased by knights, fighting with Napoleon. It's just they're Bill and Ted.
In fact, if I remember correctly, the original script for Bill and Ted, they were going to be really ostracized at school and made fun of. But when they cast Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter, they're like, no school would make fun of these two. They're just too enjoyable. They're too lovable. So they scrapped it in the way that everyone applauds when they step on stage at the end. You have to assume they are fairly popular and they're well liked.
When I see Bill and Ted, I see two puppies. There's just two puppies, and who hates puppies?
Kind of. I wouldn't disagree with that analogy.
I thought you were about to say kind of. I kind of hate puppies. I'm like, beg your pardon.
Even corgi puppies? Ha! I've got you.
I mean, I've never seen any of the Wayne's World movies either, so this kind of, absurdist, quasi-stoner fish out of water stuff. Just it's not my bag, and I freely acknowledge as such. So when I get a little bit harsh talking about this movie critically, I'm going to happily acknowledge the following, kind of caveat to what I say. If you listening or on the show watched this and enjoy and laughed at it, then as a comedy it fulfilled one of the fundamental premises of its existence, and it works for you. And fair play, Godspeed, party on. Not saying anything else about that. I don't think I laughed at this movie at all. So, on that note, let's talk about the plot of this movie, such as there's a plot. We open with the information, the knowledge being revealed to us that after their epic concert at the Grand Canyon, the Wild Stallions, spelled with entire too many Y's.
Because awesome. I've got a Wild Stallion concert tour sweatshirt, and it's one of my favorite articles of clothing.
Nice.
I have no nostalgia for the 90s when people were doing that unironically, so your mileage will vary. They had a bit of success, and then the band wound up breaking up, and now the group, now it's mostly just Bill and Ted playing, sad little venues. We see them at the wedding of, was it Ted's younger brother?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, here's the thing, Robert, and they explain this in the movie. In the first movie, Missy is Bill's stepmom, and she is 3 years older than them, and she is gorgeous. There's a lot of jokes about how, Ted's like, wow, your stepmom's so hot. Shut up, Ted. Shut up, Ted. And,
remember when I asked her to prom? Shut up, Ted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Second movie.
Or sorry, one more I have to get in there. The bit at the end where Sigmund Freud is analyzing Ted and his father issues, and he's like, whoa, and then he motions to Bill. He's like, nah, I just got an edible complex. I'm good.
Yeah, that was a great joke. Okay, second movie, Missy divorces Bill's dad and marries Ted's dad. And they never explain why or what happened. You just see that Bill's dad is apparently fallen apart without Missy, and she has no problems making out with her new husband in front of everyone. And now she has apparently divorced Ted's dad and is married Ted's little brother, who was maybe 13 in the first movie.
In all seriousness, because I could follow the wordplay and the silly logic of what they were saying in that intro, that bit where they're talking about their history did amuse me, especially because it concludes with Ted going, "This, of course, also happens to make my father his own son-in-law."
Yeah.
But their music has gotten very, very weird and experimental, and no one cares for it, and who can blame them?
We get
throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks.
We get to see Keanu Reeves playing a bagpipe, a theremin, and a trumpet.
He was pretty good at that theremin.
Almost all at the same time. This scene also serves to introduce us to, I think, one of the only bright spots in this movie, that being Bill and Ted's daughters, played by, I'm going to make sure I get their names right. Samara Weaving plays young Ted, Theodora. And you have Bridget Lundy Payne playing Wilhelmina, Bill. That being, wait a minute, these might be listed backwards.
No, that's it.
Yeah, you've got it. Well, it's kind of funny because at the end of Bogus Journey, they are introduced as Little Bill and Little Ted. And it's so clear that this idea to change them into their daughters was not thought of way back in the day. And I love that they managed to actually find a way to keep the name so it's not a complete, change in the canon. It's like, no, they were always girls. They just gave them feminized names. I thought that was a cute touch.
No, I just mean that I think Ted is listed as being Bill's daughter, and Bill is listed as being Ted's daughter, and I'm not sure.
Samara Weaving is, and we're just going to go by nicknames here, Thea, and that's Bill and Joanna's daughter. Bridget Lundy Payne, who is non-binary, by the way, is Billy, and that's Ted and Elizabeth's daughter. Go Go on.
Okay.
Yeah, they name their daughters after their best friend. That's the way it works.
Okay. It's just weird because they wind up, again, I say this is one of the only bright spots because those two doing a kind of riff on Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves at that same teenage age is genuinely amusing a few different times. But
This isn't the first time we've talked about Samara Weaving. She was the lead in Ready or Not, which we all agreed was probably one of the best movies of 2019.
yeah, and Bridget is one of the principal characters on a Netflix television show that I happen to enjoy called Atypical. And so, I mean, those two both do a lot of really good work generally. So, kudos to them for being a bright spot. Anyway, those two are living the lives that their fathers lived before them. They are losers, spend all their time screwing around with music. Bill and Ted are about to break up the band because
They're giving up.
Ted has just kind of had enough. He's been trying this. They've been trying this for a long time, and things just keep getting worse. And maybe it's time to just kind of let the dream die.
We also see that their wives, the princesses that they got from medieval England, are kind of the only support for the family now. They're the only ones with paying jobs, and they make it clear through what is admittedly a very funny scene in couples counseling, where the idea of how many couples are in counseling clearly didn't get through to those two. But the Bill and Ted, they've always been very devoted to the princesses in both the previous movies. They've always loved them. And they're saying flat out, okay, they're upset. We need to fix this. They are not blowing them off. They're going, we need to make them happy.
Yeah, and I give this movie a fair bit of credit for that. It would have been very easy to make these two just oblivious dunces. And instead giving them just a little bit of awareness of themselves and their place in the world kind of worked out. Anyway, this is all interrupted by... what was her name?
Kristen Shaw.
Kristen Shaw. I was going to say Carrie, but I think that's someone else entirely.
She plays Kelly, and she's the daughter of Rufus.
Yeah, she shows up from the future, and again, one of the few lines that kind of got a chuckle out of me was Samara Weaving looking out the window and telling Willie, "Dude, it's the future." As this space pod drops in, time pod, and picks up Bill and Ted to take them to the future, where they are berated for having not yet written the song that will unite all space and time, because, hey, that kind of singularity is a great idea. So they try to lock them up and go, hey, work on this. You only have 90 minutes. Hey, that's about the length of our feature film. Huh. Coincidence.
They actually keep it in real time. Every time they check how much time's left, that is literal. It's how much time is left before the movie ends. It was very well done, I thought.
Yeah, I would love to see that gimmick explored with something that could make more out of it, but...
Like a history report?
Sure, something like that.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Someone should make that movie.
Yeah,
I feel like there's a reference that I'm not getting there.
That's the plot of the first movie.
I told you I haven't seen it.
They are told that if they don't complete the song and have it ready to go and play it at a location they've never heard of I think they said it's 7:17 that evening, essentially the universe, space, time, reality, all of it is just going to go pop.
Yeah, they have upped the stakes significantly since the first film.
Yeah, so Bill and Ted decide that, well, we did this at some point, right? How about we just go into the future and steal it from our future selves? So they get into the original phone booth, they head to the future where they meet themselves, and their selves go, yeah, life sucks, our wives left us, our band still isn't taken off, and you think if we could have written the song by now, we would have. So they go further into the future, things continue to go downhill across several iterations of this process of going into the future, trying to find some variation of themselves that have actually written this stupid song.
We get an awesome Dave Grohl cameo out of it.
I'm not gonna lie.
Dave Grohl. If only your reputation wasn't sullied with the existence of Nirvana. There is a robot that is sent back in time to kill them because apparently some other interpretation of the vaunted words of George Carlin was, well, maybe if they're just dead, everything will work out. So there's a robot that travels back in time to try to kill them. It accidentally kills Ted's father, Bill's father, I don't know, one of the two.
It's Ted's father.
Ted's father.
And the
Accidentally
police truck.
kills... Yeah. Accidentally kills Ted's father, continues looking for them, winds up getting beaten down by prison versions of Bill and Ted in some distant future. This is all set against the backdrop of their wives being told by their future selves that there's no possible outcome in the future where they're happy with Bill and Ted, so they have to leave them.
And of course, we get the daughters who, when Kelly comes back to what is essentially the present, Billy and Thea say, so we want to help our dads. Can we borrow the time pod and go put an awesome band together?
Yeah, those two decide to... They start with Jimi Hendrix, who just says, no, I'll only play if you can get Louis Armstrong. They get Louis Armstrong. They get Jimi Hendrix. They go back. They get Mozart. They get some Chinese flautist whose name escapes me, and then that dovetails into them going and picking up some tribal drummer to create the most epic band throughout history.
Her name is Ling Lung.
Ling Lung is actually a mythological Chinese figure who supposedly created bamboo flutes and was responsible for bringing a new era of music to China.
Very cool if true.
Well, it's a myth. It's a myth. But that's where I was saying, whoa, the story of Ling Lung is true. But I'm just going to say this. The scene of Jimi Hendrix pretty much calling out Mozart by...
Hendrix and Mozart riffing together was something I did not expect to be that cool.
That was an amazing scene. I loved it. It's like the no words. They don't say anything. He's standing outside. Mozart doesn't know what's going on, but they both keep playing, and I loved it.
Yeah, that was really awesome. Ling Lun immediately picking up on a bit of flute that Mozart plays was kind of amusing. But this unfortunate supergroup of people winds up getting nuked by our robot, who is just one of the worst parts of this entire movie. Dennis. So they all wind up in hell for various reasons. I mean, most of those were not good people, so it makes sense.
I'm just assuming that the robot's gun automatically sends you to hell because there's no other reason I think that they would all end up there. Why the truck would end up there, especially.
Look,
Though
man.
I had an interesting thought during that scene. It's like, you think that hell has better music than heaven?
No.
Because think about it. Look at most musicians. That they're probably not going to heaven. Sex, drugs, rock and roll.
Yeah, but you do also kind of assume that they're allowed to play music in hell.
Well, maybe. I mean, people will probably get bored after a while.
For those of us who have seen the previous two movies, what did you think about the change in design of hell? That it goes from what was kind of a very angular, purposely skewed, kind of almost mechanical style to a fire and brimstone dragons lake of lava style.
I cannot remember enough of Bogus Journey to really comment on that. I would just end up quoting Red Letter Media, so...
Hey, you stole Mark's line.
I thought Mark's line was just quoting Red Letter Media.
Mark, you've been unusually quiet in the background. Do you need to add anything to this or tell us to shut up?
Somebody doesn't... Robert's never going to get through this plot review, so yeah, I'm not saying anything.
Look, I'm only meandering because there's not much of a plot. Anyway,
no, it's the 9,000 interruptions you've gotten. So
Bill and Ted eventually do find their very old selves in the future, who give them their the song that they wrote.
Best scene in the movie.
This is actually the
9,001.
This is actually the iteration of time travel where the princesses from the future steal the phone booth and go back in time to beg their past selves to make a better life away from Bill and Ted. So Bill and Ted wind up, they hear that their daughters are in hell from the robot. They convince the robot to kill them. The robot has a crisis of conscience and tries to kill itself, so they jump onto him and they all get blown up. They all go to hell where they reunite with Death. They reform the Wild Stallions. He's willing to take them all back up to the surface, where they arrive at the fated point in time. As all reality starts kind of condensing itself around this particular version and this particular space and time, they have the moment of realization that, wait, it wasn't us, it was our daughters that came up with what happened. So they turn it over to DJ Skrillex, who creates... I can't say that joke because it might actually be... You might actually think I'm serious. They turn it over to those two who do a quasi-electric music thing, which I don't have a lot of patience for.
Thanks to the Guitar Central van that was located exactly where they got dropped off. That last scene was filled with so much product placement.
Yes, it was. They wind up distributing instruments to everyone else from all time and space who has been condensed here. They slowly wind up making a song that sounds about as generic as a Bon Jovi song. But everyone does come together because everyone gets to play the song together, and we all live happily ever after. I puke, the end. So, yeah, I don't have a lot of good things to say about this. This movie felt like it never quite wanted to end. Stuff just kind of happens. There's not a lot of rhyme or reason or cohesion to it. I wasn't terribly amused by almost anything that took place, which is kind of the big mark of success for a comedy movie, is whether or not you, again, find it amusing. But I freely admit, again, not really my thing here. I'm not much of the demographic and whatnot, but so didn't care for it. Thought it was bland, again, fairly uninteresting, a bit interminable. But that's kind of my read on it. So, Mark, since you've been quiet the longest, I'll turn it over to you. What do you think of this movie? Where did you land? How excellent were you?
How excellent. Who's most bodacious? No, I mean, this is one of those things where, like, and as I think about the age difference and everything, like, my wife was really excited about it. Like, I was going to watch it today, before the show, and my wife was like, no, we watched the first two all together as a family. We need to watch the third one together as a family, and this was, like, Saturday night. And I was like, ugh, okay. And I know her reaction to it was she got bored midway through. And that's kind of how I feel about the movie, is the adventure that Bill and Ted go on, where they're trying to steal from their former selves, I felt was interminable. There's some funny interactions here and there. Like, you know, the bit when they get caught in Dave Grohl's house, that I thought was funny, but the conversations...
We have to do something that we won't be able to remember.
Yeah. But even, like, you know, like going out the front door thinking they have the song, and it's a Dave Grohl song, and Dave Grohl's like, "What are you doing in my house?" You know, and things like that. Like, it wasn't that I didn't laugh at times, because I did. It was the same gag over and over and over again. You know, there's 2 or 3 iterations of them being shitty, and then them as old men, which then has no payoff, because it's like they just break the song in half and they end up going to hell. Which brings me to my other point. The more interesting stuff was with the daughters. You know, the whole thing with the first movie was them having to go back through time to find historical figures so they could pass their history test and save the universe. And the daughters go on this adventure where they're going back through time to find different, you know, disparate musicians to form a band in order to save the universe. I kind of think you don't need Bill and Ted for this. You have Bill and Ted and the daughters, who are doing a much more interesting thing, and were much more interesting characters, and and by the way, aren't meeting shitty versions of themselves. So the part of the movie that dealt with them, I enjoyed. The part of the movie that dealt with Bill and Ted, I go back to the line Ted says in the garage, "We've been at this a long time, and I'm tired." Just how I felt when they were on screen. Also, their act is, to me, you know, getting old. It was getting old in the second movie, you know, where like I said, like this is why I described them as puppies. They just have this wide-eyed look, and everything is, they take a couple of seconds to react to everything. Whoa. And I can only take so much of that before I'm like, all right, we got it. You're dumb. And everything surprises you. We get it. So I think you have to really love the act in order to enjoy the movie, number one. As far as, they do this, the third plot line in this movie has to do with the princesses, and it just seemed like an excuse to get them off screen. Like, we didn't want to just write them out of the movie entirely, so we gave them something to do that was entirely off screen, so that satisfies the need to have them in the movie and the need to not actually see them, which I thought was a strange choice. Just to keep the podcast moving, all in all, like, I thought it was a nice try, and if you either really love the gimmick or you haven't seen it before, it probably works for people. But after having just watched the first two, I'm already tired of this and needed to move on. And yeah, next time if there's going to be another one of these, just hand the reins over. And I kind of wish they had done that. I wish instead of having two disparate, separate journeys, I wish the fathers and the daughters had. I wish the plot had been simply the universe is collapsing in on itself. Time is out of place. We need to write this song. Well, there's only one way you're going to write the song, and that is to have the best band you can possibly get together, and then have them. And it's kind of a rehash of the first one, but at least then you can focus on the relationship between the fathers and the daughters, which I think is a stronger movie than Bill and Ted are kind of shitty people who just are adorable, so they can get away with it.
I don't disagree with that, but for a more positive take on things, Alexis, the floor is yours.
Like I said before we started the show, I grew up watching Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. My parents recorded it for me on VHS when it aired on TV one night. Making me sound ridiculously old. But I watched it so many times. It took me forever to finally watch Bogus Journey because, like I said, it was a lot darker than I think I was ready for. And a lot of the shots with the robots and hell genuinely scared me as a kid. I look back on it now and I can appreciate the darker tone, and that it was really great that they decided to try something completely different instead of just rehashing the first movie. But Bill and Ted have always had a very special place in my heart. Hell, I used to get up early on Saturday mornings to watch cartoons, and I watched the Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventures animated series. So I knew that I wanted to see this, and I knew that I was going to enjoy seeing these characters again. And there are some flaws with this movie. It is not perfect, but I think it hits all the right buttons. I think that they do a really good job capturing what people liked about the first two movies and ignoring what people didn't like about the first two movies. Alex Winter and Keanu Reeves, they've gone on multiple talk shows and said that they've always been very close friends. They've been close friends since they first met. That they pretty much both got the job in the first movie because the producer saw that they acted so well together and they wanted that chemistry. They have been friends forever. They joke about how they would go hang out and fans would recognize them and just run up to them. It's like, excellent, wild stallions, and everything. And that was part of the reason they wanted to make this movie, because all these years later, like, the fans still remember this. The fans still come up to us and quote the movie. The love is still there. And I liked seeing these guys come back up, play these characters. I thought they played it really well. They didn't play it like they were still stuck as teenagers. They clearly have matured. They have gotten older. They are older versions of themselves, and they captured that. Excuse me. The girls who played the daughters definitely stole the show. I really enjoy them, especially the girl who played Billy. Oh my God. I swear, the way she just kind of swivels her head around and has that goofy smile. it is younger Keanu Reeves in a cute top. There is no question. No, I really enjoy this film. I went ahead and bought it on VOD. I'm glad I did, and I'll probably watch it again.
We interrupt this happy moment of the podcast for some tragic news, Mark. Netflix has canceled The Big Show.
Well, shit happens.
But hey, worry or none.
Yeah.
Piss on that decision-making process, by the way. All right, back to our regularly scheduled bit of nonsense. Dave, you like this movie, I assume? You said you and I were going to disagree, which is fine and dandy. We have civil disagreements all the time. What did you think? How did you enjoy it? What did you enjoy about it? The floor is yours.
Okay, so I agree with what Mark and Alexis has mentioned, that like really the core of this series is Bill and Ted, and I think your enjoyment of it really goes down to how much you like those characters and the act. Like Bill and Ted, like together they're actually able to do some pretty neat stuff, yet they both kind of act like twits. So it's almost like you took sort of one fairly smart person and split them into two idiots.
That's not an inaccurate description. I approve.
Yeah, like as much as it's silly, but it also kind of makes sense. Yeah, like the bit where they're trying to run away from their future selves in the house, and it's like, well, they're gonna know whatever we would do, so we got to do something we don't know what we're doing, and they put buckets on their heads and just start spinning around, so they have like no memory of what happened during that time, and they just happen to stumble outside, and you even see like the future is like, oh no, they're doing the thing.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, and yeah, like you think like this is really dumb, but it also kind of makes sense. So yeah, like certainly the highlight of this film is down to the acting. That Alex Winters and Keanu Reeves do a fantastic job of playing like middle-aged Bill and Ted, where it's not exactly the same performance, but you still feel like these are these exact same characters, just older. You know, they've been through a bit more of life. The acting for the doctors was really good, because that could have gone really bad so easily.
Yeah, I don't think anyone in this gives a bad performance.
Yeah, so kudos to them for that. I mean, my only real sort of complaint about the daughters is they're just more Bill and Ted, and which is fine. That's the joke. Is that their young adult daughters are exactly the same as them at that age. But yeah, I don't really think that adds much new to it other than that. But yeah, like again, they were likable. They were fun to watch together. They had a great interplay with the other characters in the movie. So good on them for that. But I think the problem was they didn't have enough time just for one plot. Like they didn't have enough ideas for just having Bill and Ted going into the future and seeing these different future versions of themselves, so they kind of had to add in like their daughters doing the rehash of the original plot, and then adding in the princesses going off on their off-screen adventure. So I think we sort of got the 2.5 plot lines instead of just the one. But I do appreciate how it doesn't just rehash the first or the second film. They do go a bit of its own way in Bill and Ted meeting other versions of themselves and the interplay between them. Like especially the part at the last time when they're meeting like their old selves, pretty much on their deathbeds, and they just kind of split up and start talking. It's like, I feel like we never really got the chance to know each other. It's like, yeah, dude, I'm sorry about that. It's just such a ridiculous situation, but played with such sincerity and just the right amount of silliness and earnest. It just works, and like everyone in the theater, like all 5 of us, thanks to social distancing, was cracking up at that. Just it's absurd, but somehow it works.
So you saw it in one of the 1,000 theaters it was playing in?
Yeah, apparently Canada's doing better with our COVID management, so yay.
Everyone's doing better than us with their COVID management.
That's not entirely true.
I do agree with you,
Which
Mark.
is not to say that we're doing great, by the way. We're kind of a train wreck in that respect, too.
No, I agree with you, Mark. No one gives a bad performance of this. Hell, even Kid Cudi, I think, gives. Actually, I'm not going to lie. Kid Cudi was, I think, one of the funniest parts of this film. I just love how it just all of a sudden pops out of nowhere, and he has complete geek fluent speech about quantum theory.
Well, apparently he was playing a version of Station, from what the wiki tells me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Still, I really like. I mean, I love it. It's like when they're all in hell, and they're like, and we got all these historical figures. Oh, and Kid Cudi, who's not really a historical figure, and he looks at him and smiles and says, I think now I am."
Yeah, I don't have a tremendous amount of problem with the craft. I mean, it was a $25 million movie. It looks like a $25 million movie. You know, some of the green screen stuff is pretty looking, but kind of bland. You know, I just got my craft issues are with the plot. The performances were what they were, and they were all, you know, everyone had a job to do, and they executed their job perfectly. It's like I said, it was one of those movies that when it was over, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna dread the podcast because I don't have a lot to say about this. It just was kind of there.
Yeah, like I even thought the princesses, for what little work they had to do, did all right. Like the bit where they're talking to their therapist and Bill and Ted walk in, it's like, oh, are you traveling through time again?
They
and
never
like,
addressed.
I was born in 1410.
They
like,
never
what?
addressed what the actual issue was with the. I mean, I thought it was implied that the problem with the marriages was that Bill and Ted were kind of enmeshed, and they didn't feel like they had separate lives, and then on top of that they were dedicated to the music that wasn't going anywhere, and that these were all problems. And I feel like we never.
Yeah, the princess plot was the weakest aspect of the film. I don't really see why we need we have to save our marriages when like the other thing going on is like the complete destruction of the space-time continuum and the end of all things. Like it's kind of hard to go for higher stakes than that.
We needed stakes both big and small.
I wouldn't have minded seeing a little bit more with the princesses and what they traveled on. I mean, they pop up at the end. They say they went through all of these different realities and timelines, and they are choosing to stay with their husbands, and they love them. These two actresses were really good. Interesting enough that the princesses have never been played by the same actresses. All three movies they got to.
I think if they had actually done something with the princess arc, it would have been an opportunity for more gags. You know, and except they reserved all the gags for Bill and Ted, you know, and playing themselves, and that to me got old real quick. I would have liked to have seen a variety of gags. You know, so some time spent with the princesses, and you get to see some of the things that they saw, I think would have been nice as well.
Yeah, I love how they downplay their time travels. The scene, it's like, oh, I'm so nervous about time travel. We haven't done it in 25 years. And when they're talking to the cats, like, no, really, we're English princes. I was born in 1410. Well, she was born in 1408.
Yeah, it's. What I find strange is, like, don't they have royalties from any of the Wild Stallion music? Like, it doesn't look like Bill and Ted are living to excess.
No, they're living suburban lives, and it's said first that the wives work. So you know, let's assume they're nurses or something, and they you know, there's enough money between the two families that they can afford suburban homes. Robert, what did you want to say about the movie so that we can move this on?
I don't have much to add. Again, you guys seem to have a better insight into the franchise as a whole. I was, again, almost entirely uninterested, bored. Again, I give kudos to the actresses playing the daughters because I think they're the only highlight that this movie has. And that shouldn't really surprise anyone because they're both very talented actresses.
Yeah, I only have 2 more points to get through here. One that Robert will probably like.
All right.
Yeah, because like I too did not like Dennis the robot.
Oh god, he's so unnecessary.
I that just kind of awkward humor just doesn't work for me, and I think that they really missed a step with it. Like I could kind of see how that character could have worked, because like the whole premise of the original film is that, you know, the music that Wild Stallions will eventually write is so good that it unites people beyond borders. You know, like enters into contact with extraterrestrials and just like creates this foundation of this utopian future. But when they actually go to the future, it's also funny because this is a future where basically culture is based around Bill and Ted. You know, like the auto dialer on the phone booth ends with like service cannot be resumed, party on, dudes. Like so all of the
it's a backdoor pilot for Idiocracy, is what you're saying?
Kind of, except the society is a successful, advanced society. It's just everyone sort of talks more like Bill and Ted. Like they say, whoa, no way, bogus, excellent, just party on, dudes. And that's the humor. So the idea of them sending basically a Terminator back, but from that time period, like could you imagine like Arnold Schwarzenegger's The Terminator talking like Bill and Ted? That could be really funny. Like what kind of killer robot would this civilization in the future develop? But unfortunately, they just went with Dennis just kind of being awkward all the time, and it just kind of fell flat.
They didn't clarify it, but they make a joke how when he starts remembering his names. I mean, it's clear he's a cyborg, not a full robot. And Kelly makes a comment when it's like, "Mom, you named him after my ex." Was anyone else waiting for the reveal that was her ex that they turned into a cyborg?
Not really. I just thought it was like it got annoying how he kept on saying his full names. Like, yes, we heard you the first time. Like that joke is died 3 minutes ago. It's move on. But and yeah, again, like the trying not to stutter anymore. Editing a podcast is a really good way of learning what you don't like about how you speak.
Yes, it is.
Very much.
Yeah. But my point is that I wish they had shown more of this future still being the Bill and Ted Society instead of just generic utopian future tech society. It lost some flavor there that I think didn't work, and the fashion I just thought was just not really that interesting.
I'll buy that.
Yeah.
It was more interesting than the fashion in the first movie.
Yeah, but again, that was only a 5-minute scene where, again, the joke was they're in the future where they are the foundation of the entire society. Where, all their rituals and their language is based around wild stallions and Bill and Ted. Like, they do air guitar as, like, their symbol of greeting and stuff like that. I mean, it's silly, but it's fun and done with just the right amount of sincerity that it's likable. And my only other real issue with the film is sort of how they up the stakes artificially, where originally it was just like they write the song and it makes a utopian future. Now apparently by them not writing the song, it's going to destroy all of the universe completely. And like, isn't it just enough that without Bill and Ted's song that the future just isn't going to be good anymore? So yeah, those are kind of my main issues and thoughts on it. But overall, it was fun seeing the acting, the performances. It was a good time. I laughed. I don't think it's as good as the original film, but it's a fun entry in the franchise, and it could have been so much worse. And I'm just happy that there was like a good movie made by people that wanted to make a good movie.
All right. If that's the end of all things, then let's talk about the money, such as it is.
Electronic music, the end of all things.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money. Money, money, money.
Dollar.
All right, on a budget of $25 million, this thing has made $1 million. It was played on 1,000 theater screens, and it was also available VOD. I watched it VOD. I'm assuming the other two Americans on this podcast watched it VOD, and the one Canadian got to see it in an actual movie theater. So you contributed to that $1 million.
Cost me $30. I'm not happy about it.
These things happen. So yeah, will it make over $25 million? Who's to say? It's very hard to tell with the VOD releases if they're going to make back their budgets or not. So it's kind of hard to talk about the money. Earlier today we talked about New Mutants. There was only one change in the top 10, and that was what did I say? Oh, Tenet. Creeped into the top 10. Tenet's going to be the first one where we can really take a bite into the money and talk about that side of it.
It's such a shame that movie's box office return is going to get wrecked by the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
Until there's a way of tracking VOD buys, it's hard to say if this movie is going to be successful or not. It's getting good reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. It's got, I think, both an 80%. Let me look again. It's got.
It seems like a lot of people
tomato meter and an 80% audience score.
It seems to me like a lot of people just kind of went, "Hey, it's a feel-good movie that makes me feel good at a time when I feel terrible." I mean that's not nothing, but I imagine I'm gonna yell at critics about that particular take a lot.
Yeah. Also, hey, it's a movie, an actual movie in 2020.
I haven't seen one of those since February.
Yeah, it's like, finally, something besides Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah. So
I would totally have rather watched Sonic again, just for the record.
They released the film in theaters after Trolls.
So we've got Tenet and we've got Mulan coming up. Tenet is going to be a traditional movie release because Christopher Nolan said there's no way in God's green earth I'm letting you release this thing VOD. And then Mulan, who I think Disney may have shot itself in the foot. This is something we can talk about real quick. Disney, at about the time theaters were starting to open up, and they could have had a bite of that theatrical release, they were like, fuck it. We're going to throw all of our eggs into the Disney Plus basket and make it a premium release through there. And I guess they figured the math out was there's enough people. If everybody who has a Disney Plus subscription buys Mulan, this thing will make some money.
Well, I think in the wake of when Hamilton got released onto Disney Plus, they saw a pretty significant surge in subscription sales.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they're trying to time the release of Mulan on that to maybe incentivize some of the people who bought their service for that property to stick around and potentially, spend more money.
Yeah, which makes sense. I mean, we've talked ad nauseum about how Disney Plus has failed to create enough original content to keep people subscribed. I mean, a lot of people gave up their subscription right after the Mandalorian. So, we'll see what happens with it. But as far as normally we talk about how much a movie might potentially make based on what's coming out next. The month of September has no major releases after Tenet and Mulan, and the next major release is the beginning of October with Wonder Woman. So, there's time for people who didn't watch it in the opening weekend. The problem is, after the opening weekend, sales decline, right? That's usually the pattern. So we'll see how well this does. It's very hard to predict with the variables that we have right now. Anything else on the business end of this that you wanted to discuss, Robert?
Just kind of when it comes to Mulan, I think part of what Disney was looking at was, what's going on in China, which is not good, as one of their considerations for what they were going to do with this. I also think they've kind of committed to not releasing Black Widow straight onto that platform, and if they're going to bite the bullet on one of those properties and not release it into theaters, going with the one that you're going to be trying to sell kids on to potentially get to bug their parents into buying for them makes a bit of sense.
No, I think by November, hopefully we'll start to see a decrease in COVID cases, not continued increases. I mean, one never knows.
Second surge in conjunction with the flu season, baby. That's where we're headed.
Oh, terrific. I can't wait to see the news make hay out of that. All right.
Oh, of course they will. Even if there's not actual hay to be made, they'll have to fill some of their 24/7 airtime requirements. So they'll make up some BS or exaggerate or do whatever they have to do to try and keep people watching.
All right. Not a whole lot else to add here, so let's get to the critical review.
Are you ready? No! I said, are you ready?
No, God! No, God, please, no! 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 No!
All right, this one's more for David and Alexis because you've not seen the first two. James Crute of stuff.co.New Zealand. Just as scatty, nutty, and fitfully funny as those two originals.
Yeah, pretty much.
I could see that.
I mean,
Okay.
it's basically it's more Bill and Ted. There's your review. We could have just said that and saved the time.
Yeah, but this poor schmuck is paid by the word.
Alan Almacher of the MacGuffin, Robert. One of Bill
Vaunted publication, that.
For the record, I say we would save our podcast the time by just saying it's more Bill and Ted. But anyway, moving on.
One of Bill and Ted's trademark lines is "Be excellent to each other." Lord knows we need more of that. Really,
Oh,
that's the
shut
line
up.
he chose? Come on.
That line barely even makes it in the movie. I think they say it maybe twice.
Yeah, I think the only time they say it is when called before the Supreme Ones or whatever the hell their name was.
Yeah.
And what do you have to say for yourselves? Be excellent?
Yeah, Abraham Lincoln said it better.
That he did.
Party on,
That's-
dudes.
That's pretty much universally true.
Germaine Lucier of io9.com. It is most triumphant, with only a sprinkle of heinous. Ugh.
Congratulations, you did the completely, totally original thing of doing a review of a Bill and Ted movie speaking like Bill and Ted. You are
No
the
one
only
has-
person to do that in all of film criticism.
I can't believe you were so brave enough to do that. This is shocking. Someone would post a review trying to use the language and terminology of the subjects that they're reviewing. Clearly, you, sir, stand alone. You are a scarecrow, outstanding in your field.
This one's from Alexis Hejna's boyfriend, Chris Stuckman. Alexis Hejna once defended Chris Stuckman, and therefore, like a juvenile, I have to say they're boyfriend and girlfriend. It's
Are you
such...
done?
Maybe. We'll never know, will we? It's such an optimistic movie, it's almost sugary. It's so sweet, likable, and not pretentious in the least. It's exactly what a Bill and Ted movie in 2020 should be.
I don't know. That sounds pretty good if you ask me.
Yeah, that sounds all right.
I don't like it. Robert?
Look, I can appreciate if you want to if you want to have the underlying sentiment of, I personally am sick of like dark, cynical movies. So seeing something fundamentally optimistic felt good. Fair enough. I don't argue that point. This is a movie designed to make you feel good. I'll grant you that.
I mean,
But
it keeps
I-
in line with the series too. Like,
I just really fail to understand why. One, how that rises to the level of sugary. I don't know. Maybe I'm just really used to my sugary movies being really sappy.
yeah, I
But-
wouldn't call it a sugary or a sweet movie, but you know, it's nice. It's feel good.
That's kind of what I'm saying. Like, I don't have a problem with him liking the movie. I have a problem with his use of the words sugary and sweet.
Yeah, because I don't think either of those are accurate adjectives.
Yeah, this one's for you, Robert. Rendy Jones of Rendy Reviews.
You
Okay.
self-employed loser.
Watching Matheson and Solomon breathe life into their characters again is equivalent to the scene in Toy Story 3.
Shut the.
You
Where
broke
Andy-
up for-
wait,
Stop
wait.
it myself.
Are we talking about the scene in Toy Story 3 where they're about to go into like the trash incinerator?
No, is
Because that's
equivalent
like the
to
most
this,
memorable scene.
is equivalent to the scene in Toy Story 3 where Andy plays with his toys for the last time.
Get.
No,
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Who was this jackass?
Rendy Jones of Rendy Reviews.
You, person, you have done a great injustice to the entire human race by associating yourself with us with that particular comparison. That is so woefully, categorically wrong in every possible capacity. Much as I am not an Adam Sandler fan, I must quote from Billy Madison. everyone involved is now dumber for having heard your thoughts on this subject. At no point in your rambling, incoherent mess of a thought were you anything close to resembling a salient point. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul. Just shame on you for that.
Feel better now, dude?
No, because this jackass still thinks that's an accurate comparison. Do you understand how much darker that makes the world? That there is some person out there so woefully inept at their job and, assuming this is in earnest, painfully stupid, as to compare a genuinely heartwarming, in cases, emotionally gut-wrenching scene to Bill and Ted getting back together to go whoa and play air guitar a few times. It is, again, the world is a slightly darker place for this person's existence on that take.
About all I can think of is Bill and Ted in the old folks' home. That's like the closest moment I could think of that you could possibly compare with that scene from Toy Story 3. And I guess maybe if you really, 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 really like Bill and Ted, you might be able to mine that depth of emotion for that. But overall, I thought it was just a funny scene. But to each their own.
Mark, I need you to read the next review, because if you don't, I'm pretty sure Robert's going to go set something on fire.
By Sean Collier?
Sure, why not?
Oh, read the next review as in just move on, not your reading along. Okay, never mind. Yes, I have one. Elias Zavada of Film International. Like Santa Claus, coming down the chimney at Christmas, Bill and Ted Face the Music offers a crazed, intoxicating gift we can use this quarantine season.
I understand that good writing reviews for movies that are good but not great is the hardest review to write, so points for trying, I guess.
You're just not good at your job. And really, you should not be proud of the paycheck you collect if this is the quality of work you produce. Much as I do
Santa
agree
Claus.
Yeah, I don't know what they were going for. I agree with Dave that writing a review for an utterly middle-of-the-road movie is probably a difficult thing, because you can only say it's middle-of-the-road so many ways. But that said, if you're going to cash that check you got, I expect a little more out of you than that.
So there's an ongoing theme with a lot of the positive reviews. Like, I've just read 4 or 5 of them in a row, and they all start the same way. In this terrible time we're living in, Bill and Ted brought, some laughter and life to us. That sort
some
of
normalcy.
Thing. Yeah.
I get
there's
that,
a lot of
yeah.
that here.
Again, I can appreciate that on a personal level, but it has nothing to do with the quality of the movie.
Marianne Johansson of Flick Philosophy.
Oh, no.
Yes,
No.
yes.
Didn't she get the Rona and die? Come on.
No, stop that. That's not nice.
Ouch. Yeah,
Neither are her
that's a bit
reviews.
rough, man.
Don't wish death on people. The chill, zen, and goofy charm of...
I'll reserve it for people who actually deserve it more. Fair enough.
The chill, zen, and goofy charm of Gen X's Philosopher Fools remains intact, but their latest adventure is too familiar a retelling. Still, be excellent to each other won't ever not be worth heeding. This person got bullied in school.
Almost certainly. I mean, and to be fair, I just bullied them a little bit more on the podcast.
It was better than the last review you read.
I'm sorry. Why? How do I say this? How woefully inadequate is your vocabulary and grasp on reality that you, a professional, are trying to tell other people that be excellent to each other is great life advice? I'm not saying it's bad advice. It's not. But why are we quoting this movie to try and get life advice? I don't know. Maybe I'm just not as woefully, catastrophically depressed as everyone else is right now. Or maybe I've just been depressed for so long that being a little bit extra depressed now on occasion doesn't faze me. But I mean, this is just sad. Like, oh, Bill and Ted brought a spark of much-needed joy into my life. I'm sorry that your life is that miserable if you're latching onto it this hard. But that's not an excuse for pretending the movie's good when it made you just because it made you feel good. Those two things are not the same.
Austin Burke of Flick Fan Nation. Bill and Ted not only return, but the magic captured by this franchise so many years ago is back and better than ever. This is everything fans of the franchise have been waiting for. Alexis, is this everything you've been waiting for?
Seriously?
David, is this everything you've been waiting for?
Well, to be honest, I was never waiting for a Bill and Ted sequel. I enjoyed the original movie, and I was happy to see more again with it being done in good faith. But I wouldn't heap that much praise on it. I mean, it's good. I enjoyed it. It was nice seeing all the characters again. I had a fun time. I think it's a it's a good movie, but like it's not the second coming for me.
Not even close.
It's just it's nice, new Bill and Ted movie. No, it's fun. It's more Bill and Ted. Good.
Yeah,
that's what I wanted. That's what I got.
This was everything Bill and Ted fans have been waiting for. Sure.
I cannot speak for all Bill and Ted fans.
Well, apparently this person can.
I'm happy the movie made them happy.
And again, my rant there should not dissuade or does not counteract my point that if you enjoyed the movie and it brought some happiness into your life, I am glad for you. I'm glad you found something in this world that made it a little bit brighter. We all need that as a general rule. I'm just saying that doesn't actually go to the craft of the movie so much as just your personal experience, which is, again, not nothing, but if you're not going to have the intellectual honesty and integrity to acknowledge as such, I don't have a lot of time or respect for your opinion.
All right. So I thought the movie was pretty straightforward. I didn't think it was wacky. I thought it kept in the spirit of the first two, but I thought, in terms of like pushing an envelope or taking chances, this was a really tame, by-the-numbers, paint-by-numbers kind of movie. So here's Alison Wilmore, New York Magazine and/or Vulture, top critic with a different opinion. The most successful quality of the film is how close it keeps in spirit and haphazard style to the first two installments and how it feels proudly unstuck in time.
You know what? No, I'm not going to agree with that, actually. How do I say this? Bill and Ted is a very dated property. You watch that, and it's very clearly late 80s, early 90s. While this movie is not late 80s, early 90s, it does have a very distinctive, contemporary feel to who. I mean, look at the way Keanu Reeves dresses. Believe it or not, that is very much a statement on place and time, and not just in the kind of generic way that all fashion is. That part of California, in that age, in that income bracket, is very much a dated thing, and that's not. Which is, to be clear, that's not the end of the world for any property. Not everything is timeless, and the fact that some stuff can easily be dated is part of what makes it work. I would argue that is part of what makes Bill and Ted work. The fact that you can so clearly get a feel for a specific place and time out of it, rather than, again, the sort of timeless, eternal quality that makes other stuff endlessly rewatchable.
I'd say the story is timeless.
Well, I would say the story is very much based on time, but that's my love
How
of
is the
semantics.
story timeless? The universe collapsing in on itself and time unraveling is timeless to you?
Well, I'm thinking more in terms of the original film, like as in you can perfectly follow along what's going on. You can understand the stakes and the characters.
Okay.
Like the story is not only this story could only be be taking place in 1987. You could do a complete remake in 2020 with pretty much the exact same setup.
Yeah,
I mean, Bill and Ted would be acting different.
The idea of changing your circumstances when given the proper resources to do so, sure.
Yeah, you just have two guys trying to start a band. It turns out that the music they will eventually create will lead to a utopian future, but if Ted's father ships him off to military school because he fails his history report, then the band will not come together and the whole future will be rewritten. So they get given a time machine to go through time and grab historical figures so they can pass their report. I mean, it's silly, but it works. Like you could make that movie now, and that would still work. So I don't think the 80s is really, integral to the story. There's nothing there that really dates it other than that just happened to be when it was filmed. There's no like pop culture jokes for the time. Like, you could show this to your kids, they could show it to their grandkids, and they could show it to their kids, and everyone could still follow along. It would just be like, why don't they have cell phones? Like, well, this is in 1987. The cell phone hadn't been invented yet. That's kind of it.
Well, they had been invented, but car phones were a much bigger deal and pagers than cell phones.
Yeah, but not everybody had one. Is kind of what I'm getting at.
I'm going to read this last one. Another top critic. This one from Rolling Stone, Mr. Peter Travers.
Oh no! I know this man's work.
Whoa, 30 years. Reeves and Winter return as the SoCal Rockers for one more bodacious go at saving the world. So what if the movie is all over the place? This labor of fan service love makes a most excellent cure for the heinous pandemic blues. Ugh.
Whoa, how original. You used the original language of Bill and Ted to write in your review. No other critic has done that.
Can we please not go through that whole thing again?
I'm going to do it for everyone.
I'm not going to rehash what I said about it. I'm just going to say this again. I understand the importance of place and time. I mean, honestly, without the state of cinema in the 70s, Star Wars doesn't have nearly the impact that it does, I think, culturally. But there's only so much that is... I mean, why are we talking about the movie like the state of the pandemic has anything to do with the quality of the film? I don't really understand that.
Because everything has to be political.
No, but we'll wait until we have to talk about Wonder Woman, when I'm sure we'll crack open this can of worms again.
Oh, wait. Mark, you said that's coming out in October?
Yeah, October 2nd.
Oh, would it be so much more interesting if it came out after the election?
No.
I don't know who's going to win, but it'll be very interesting to see because, obviously they're going to be taking a shot or two at Trump.
I know who's going to win.
Well, you were right last time.
All right, so let's move on. That wraps up our show. I want to thank everyone for coming on and talking about Bill and Ted Face the Music. Alexis, tell them about your... God, every time I do that. Go ahead and plug your stuff.
You turned on your Alexa.
Twice in one day. Honeysuckle Rose Creations, the intersection of geek and chic. We're just getting ready for our Labor Day sale. All weekend, everything in both shops is going to be 20% off. It's on our Etsy and Handmade and Amazon store. To those in the Kansas City area, we just started getting more of our stuff back at Level 1 game shop down at the River Market. Brain stopped working there temporarily. We're currently working on meeting with some other shops, not just in the KC and Missouri and Kansas area. We're hopefully going to be expanding across the country. I will be letting everyone know through Facebook, Instagram, and Under Duress Twitter about where you can find our fine products. But of course, as always, Etsy, Handmade, and Amazon. Honeysuckle Rose Creations, at the intersection of geek and chic.
Dave, you want to go ahead and plug your one and only podcast?
There's going to be more of those, and we all know it.
Yes, there will. Yep. So we just released the first episode of our Star Trek retrospective series. This one covers the original series movies, Star Trek 1 through 6. We recorded it a month ago. It took me about a month to get it edited down from 3 hours to 2, so it comes with an extra hour of your life that you can use for whatever you want to. And we will be adding more episodes.
They're going to waste it.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're already listening anyway, so...
Speaking of interrupting, shut the fuck up. Let him finish.
You see, the nice thing about editing is I can get rid of that. Yeah, so more episodes will be recorded as we can get enough people to schedule to do it, and as I am willing to once again go and edit it. Other than that, I believe we're doing Agretzko Season 3 sometime this month.
Yes, that will be a week from Thursday.
Yeah, I think as far as I know in the future, that's what I'll be on. Depending on whether or not I get to see Mulan or not.
Okay. Now you can go ahead and plug your stuff there, Robert.
I'm Robert Winfree. You can find me on Twitter at Winfree MMA. I have an MMA podcast, which, I don't know, theoretically people listen to, so thank you for that to anyone that does. I cover MMA in the MMA Zone of 411 Mania, mostly Saturdays. In fact, every Saturday from now until mid-December. Because the UFC has to make up shows. Gotta make up shows. So you can find me Saturdays trying desperately to maintain my tenuous grip on sanity as I struggle through interminable event after interminable event. That somehow continues to draw well on various, according to the ratings. These unbelievably bog standard UFC events are outdrawing the NBA playoffs. So there's that. But you can follow me there if you're so inclined. You can find me here when there's movies to talk about, because I'm happy to do that. Let's see. So we have, again, Mulan coming up next week, Tenet after that. One of those I'm actually looking forward to. Though I am prepared to be pleasantly surprised by Mulan. Anything else I have to plug? No, I think just back here next week for Mulan. Is that next week or 2 weeks?
We have Mulan on Monday and then Tenet on Wednesday.
Oh, that'll be a fun week. So, yeah, you can look forward to another double shot of Damn You Hollywood next week. We're very happy to continue to entertain you in that particular respect, and we thank you for your continued support of our efforts here to keep ourselves sane, to help entertain you, and to give all of us a little bit of a social outlet. This kind of is my social outlet. I know it's kind of Mark's when he's not socializing and fraternizing with the prisoners.
Or napping. I do a lot of napping these days.
I don't blame you.
I'd like to get to napping soon, so wrap it up.
I just love that if anyone is listening to this show for the first time and has no idea what Mark actually does, they now just have this head of him locking people in.
I'm
By
not going to
prisoners,
explain
he means the people in my basement.
Well, remember, he does have the head of the brain of a German Shepherd and the body of a 16-year-old boy in the trunk of his car. So we're very happy to be back next week for both of those shows. That should be a lot of fun. We will see you next time. Was there anything else? I feel like there's something else, but if I can't remember it, I'm just going to let that go. Nope. Nothing. I don't know. You want to say anything about Chadwick Boseman? Hang on. Do we want to say anything about Chadwick Boseman passing or not?
No. God, no. Can't we just stay focused on the actual topic? And, close this out?
All right. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's everything for me. If I remember it later, I'll make sure to include it on the next podcast. So tune in to see what my faulty memory has excluded from this one.
Oh, my God. You do the most rambling plugs. Here's how it's done. Check out our review of the New Mutants that we put up earlier today. Tomorrow we'll be doing a review of the book that inspired the movie, The Demon Bear Saga. We'll also have a review of WWE's Payback. Alexis Hejna will be back again this week. She'll be doing a source material with me for Bill and Ted Save the Universe. And theoretically, it's at least scheduled. We'll see if it actually happens. Sean Comer and I will be doing The Long Road to Ruin for the first 2 Bill and Ted movies. Won't that be wonderful? Won't we look like ourselves? Next week, we got Mulan, AEW All Out, Tenet, and Agretzko. You can find all of our podcasts, including the ones we did last week, The One and Only Ivan, SummerSlam, and Unleash the Archer's Abyss in the archives. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been... That's how you do it, Robert. This has been...
All right. Next time... You wait. Next week, I'll do something special for you.
I don't want special. I want fast. This has been Damn You, Hollywood. Be well, be safe, and behave.